Marcus Thompson had always believed that kindness was its own reward. As a 42-year-old construction worker with calloused hands and a gentle heart, he made it a point to help anyone in need. His wife Sarah often joked that he would stop traffic to help a cat cross the road, and she wasn't far from the truth. That particular Tuesday morning in October, Marcus was running late for his doctor's appointment at St. Mary's General Hospital. His lower back had been giving him trouble for weeks, and Sarah had finally convinced him to get it checked. The autumn air was crisp as Marcus hurried across the hospital parking lot, his work boots crunching on fallen leaves. He was fumbling with his phone, trying to call the clinic to let them know he was running behind, when he heard a small voice calling out weakly. At first he thought it might be someone talking on their phone, but something about the tone made him stop and look around. Near the hospital's main entrance, partially hidden behind a large concrete planter filled with dying seasonal flowers, Marcus spotted a small figure hunched over on the ground. As he got closer, his heart sank. It was a little girl, no more than 8 or 9 years old, wearing a faded pink dress that was too big for her tiny frame. Her long brown hair was tangled and dirty, and she was shivering uncontrollably despite the mild weather. Marcus immediately forgot about his appointment and rushed to her side. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said softly, crouching down to her level. "Are you okay? What's wrong?" The little girl looked up at him with the biggest, most frightened brown eyes he had ever seen. Her face was pale, almost ghostly white, and there were dark circles under her eyes that spoke of exhaustion and something much deeper. "I don't feel good," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "My tummy hurts really bad and I'm so cold." As she spoke, Marcus noticed that her lips had a slight blue tinge, and her small hands were trembling as she tried to wrap her thin arms around herself for warmth. Without hesitation, Marcus shrugged off his thick flannel jacket and gently draped it around the child's shoulders. The jacket practically swallowed her whole, but he could see some relief wash over her face as the warmth enveloped her. "What's your name, honey?" he asked, his voice full of concern. "Emma," she replied, pulling the jacket tighter around herself. "Emma Rodriguez. I've been waiting for my mama, but she's taking so long, and I started feeling really sick." Marcus looked around the area, expecting to see a worried parent searching for their child, but the entrance was surprisingly quiet for a Tuesday morning. "Where did you last see your mama, Emma? Is she inside the hospital?" he asked gently, not wanting to frighten her further. Emma's eyes filled with tears and she pointed toward the hospital doors. "She went inside to see the doctor about her medicine. She told me to wait right here and not move, but that was a really long time ago. I think maybe she forgot about me." The way she said it with such matter-of-fact sadness broke Marcus's heart. Something didn't sit right with Marcus about the situation. What parent would leave such a young child outside a hospital alone, especially one who was clearly unwell? He studied Emma's appearance more carefully and noticed details that concerned him. Her clothes, while clean, were obviously secondhand and didn't fit properly. Her shoes had holes in them and he could see her small toes peeking through. Most troubling of all, she had a hollow look in her eyes that reminded him of children he'd seen in documentaries about poverty and neglect. "Emma, how long ago did your mama go inside?" Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice calm and reassuring. "Do you remember what time it was?" The little girl scrunched up her face, thinking hard. "I don't know how to read the big clock yet," she admitted. "But the sun was way over there when she left." She pointed to a spot in the sky that would indicate it had been at least 3 hours since her mother had gone inside. Marcus felt his protective instincts kick into high gear. 3 hours was far too long for any parent to leave a child alone outside, especially a sick child. He pulled out his phone and checked the time. It was nearly noon, which meant Emma had been sitting there since at least 9 in the morning, possibly longer. "Emma, I'm going to help you find your mama, okay? But first I think we need to get you inside where it's warm, and maybe have one of the doctors take a look at you. You don't look like you feel very good at all." Marcus stood up slowly, extending his hand to help Emma to her feet. As Emma tried to stand, she swayed dangerously and would have fallen if Marcus hadn't caught her. Her skin felt hot to the touch despite her shivering, and he realized she likely had a fever. "Whoa there, sweetheart. Let's take this nice and slow." He scooped her up in his arms, surprised by how light she was. She felt like she weighed no more than his 6-year-old nephew, despite appearing older. "Are you going to leave me too?" Emma whispered against his shoulder, her small arms wrapping around his neck with desperate trust that made Marcus's throat tighten with emotion. "No, sweetheart," Marcus promised firmly. "I'm not going anywhere until we find your mama and make sure you're okay. That's a promise." As he carried her toward the hospital entrance, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that there was much more to Emma's story than a simple case of a mother taking longer than expected at a doctor's appointment. The automatic doors of St. Mary's General Hospital whooshed open as Marcus approached, carrying Emma in his arms. She had grown quiet during the short walk, her head resting heavily against his shoulder. As they entered the bright, sterile lobby, Marcus made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. He was going to get to the bottom of Emma's situation no matter what it took. The hospital lobby buzzed with the usual activity of patients, visitors, and medical staff going about their daily routines. Marcus approached the main reception desk where a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair looked up from her computer screen. Her name tag read, "Patricia, Patient Services." "Excuse me," Marcus said, adjusting Emma in his arms as she continued to rest against his shoulder. "I found this little girl outside. She's been waiting for her mother for several hours and she's not feeling well. Her name is Emma Rodriguez, and she says her mother came inside to see a doctor about medicine." Patricia's expression immediately shifted to one of concern as she looked at the pale child in Marcus's arms. "Oh my goodness, how long has she been outside? She looks terrible." She quickly reached for her phone. "Let me call security and see if we can locate her mother." As Patricia made the call, Marcus gently set Emma down in one of the cushioned chairs in the waiting area, making sure his jacket stayed wrapped around her small frame. "How are you feeling now, Emma?" he asked softly, crouching down to her eye level. "Still cold and sick," Emma whispered, her voice even weaker than before. "My head feels funny, like it's floating away." As she spoke, Marcus noticed that her breathing seemed labored, and she was having trouble focusing her eyes on his face. Within minutes, a security officer named James arrived, along with a nurse from the emergency department. The nurse, a woman in her 30s with short blonde hair and a no-nonsense attitude, immediately began assessing Emma's condition while asking Marcus questions about how he had found her. "Her temperature is elevated, and she's showing signs of dehydration," the nurse, whose badge identified her as Linda, announced after a quick examination. "We need to get her to the ER right away." "Have you had any luck finding her mother?" she asked the security officer. James shook his head grimly. "I've checked with all the departments, and no one has any record of a Maria Rodriguez or any variation of that name being seen today. I've also reviewed the security footage from the main entrances, and I haven't seen anyone matching the description of her mother coming or going." A chill ran down Marcus's spine that had nothing to do with the hospital's air conditioning. "What do you mean there's no record? She said her mother came inside hours ago." Linda exchanged a meaningful look with James before turning back to Marcus. "Sir, can you tell me exactly what Emma told you about her mother and how she came to be outside?" Marcus recounted everything Emma had shared with him, from waiting for her mother to the time frame she had indicated. As he spoke, he watched the expressions on the medical staff's faces grow more concerned. "Emma, sweetheart," Linda said gently, kneeling down beside the little girl's chair, "can you tell me your mama's first name? And do you remember what she was wearing when she went inside?" Emma's eyes fluttered as she tried to focus on the nurse's face. "Mama's name is Carmen," she said slowly. "And she was wearing her blue dress, the one with the flowers on it. She said she had to get her medicine refilled because she was running out." James made another call to expand the search, but Marcus could see the doubt in his eyes. Something wasn't adding up, and everyone seemed to sense it except Emma, who was growing more lethargic by the minute. "We need to get her to the ER now," Linda declared, motioning for a wheelchair. "Her condition is deteriorating, and we can continue looking for her mother while she's being treated." As they prepared to move Emma to the emergency department, Marcus felt a strong reluctance to leave her side. Despite only knowing her for less than an hour, he felt a protective bond with this little girl that he couldn't explain. "Can I come with her?" he asked. "I don't want her to be alone and scared." Linda nodded approvingly. "Actually, that would be helpful. She seems to trust you, and having a familiar face nearby might help keep her calm during the examination." As they made their way through the hospital corridors, Emma suddenly grabbed Marcus's hand with surprising strength. "Marcus," she whispered urgently, I need to tell you something important about my mama. What is it, sweetheart? Marcus asked, leaning down to hear her better. Sometimes Mama gets really sad and forgets things, Emma said, her words coming out in short gasps. She forgets to eat and she forgets to give me food, and sometimes she forgets where she is. The nice lady next door said Mama is sick in her head, not her body. Marcus felt his heart sink as the implications of Emma's words began to paint a troubling picture. Linda, who had overheard the conversation, gave Marcus a look that confirmed his growing suspicions. In the emergency department, as medical staff began working to stabilize Emma's condition, Marcus found himself in a small consultation room with Linda and James. I need to ask you some difficult questions, Linda said quietly. Based on what Emma has told us and her current condition, we're concerned that this might be a case of neglect or abandonment. What do you mean? Marcus asked, although he was beginning to suspect the answer. Emma is severely malnourished and dehydrated, Linda explained. These aren't conditions that develop overnight. Her clothes are dirty and don't fit properly, and she has some concerning bruises that appear to be in various stages of healing, combined with the fact that we can't locate any mother matching her description, and her comments about her mother forgetting things. We're starting to think that Emma may have been abandoned. James nodded gravely. We're going to have to contact Child Protective Services. If her mother is truly missing or if she intentionally left Emma outside the hospital, we need to ensure the child's safety. Marcus felt a wave of anger wash over him. How could anyone abandon such a sweet, innocent child? What happens to Emma now? He asked. First, we get her medically stable, Linda replied. Then CPS will take over and try to locate her family or place her in temporary foster care while they investigate. As they spoke, a young social worker named Rebecca arrived to begin the process of documenting Emma's case. She explained that they would need to interview Emma when she was feeling better, and that the police would also be involved to investigate whether any crimes had been committed. Marcus returned to Emma's bedside, where she was now hooked up to an IV and looking slightly more alert. Are you feeling any better, sweetheart? He asked, taking her small hand in his. Emma nodded weakly. The medicine is helping. But Marcus, I'm scared. What if my mama never comes back? What if she forgot about me forever? The fear and abandonment in her voice broke Marcus's heart all over again. Listen to me, Emma, Marcus said firmly but gently. No matter what happens, you're going to be okay. There are good people here who are going to take care of you, and I'm going to make sure you're safe. Little did Marcus know that his promise would lead him down a path he never expected, revealing truths about Emma's situation that would challenge everything he thought he knew about family, love, and the lengths people will go to protect a child. 2 days later, Marcus found himself sitting in the sterile waiting room of the County Child Protective Services office, his hands clasped tightly together as he waited for news about Emma. He had called in sick to work, unable to concentrate on anything except the little girl who had somehow captured his heart in such a short time. Sarah had been understanding, even encouraging him to follow his instincts and stay involved in Emma's case. Rebecca Martinez, the social worker assigned to Emma's case, emerged from her office with a thick folder and a grave expression. Mr. Thompson, thank you for coming in. I have some updates about Emma's situation that I think you should hear. Marcus leaned forward anxiously. Is she okay? How is she feeling? Physically, she's much better, Rebecca assured him. The doctors were able to treat her dehydration and malnutrition, and she's responding well. But emotionally, she's been asking for you constantly. She keeps asking when her Marcus is coming back. The words hit Marcus like a punch to the chest. In just a few days, this little girl had come to see him as her protector, and the thought of letting her down was unbearable. What have you found out about her mother? Rebecca opened her folder and pulled out several documents. That's where things get complicated, Mr. Thompson. We've been investigating Carmen Rodriguez, the woman Emma claims is her mother, and what we've discovered is quite disturbing. Marcus braced himself for bad news, but nothing could have prepared him for what Rebecca was about to reveal. Carmen Rodriguez does exist, and she was indeed Emma's mother, Rebecca began carefully. However, Carmen died 3 months ago from complications related to her mental illness and drug addiction. She was found in an abandoned building downtown, and at the time, authorities had no knowledge of Emma's existence. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. What do you mean Emma's mother died 3 months ago? That's impossible. Emma said she went into the hospital to get medicine. Rebecca nodded sympathetically. We believe Emma has been living on her own for the past 3 months, possibly longer. The apartment where she and her mother lived was abandoned, and neighbors reported not seeing Carmen for quite some time before her death. We think Emma has been surviving by scavenging for food, sleeping in various locations, and quite possibly experiencing episodes of confusion or hallucinations brought on by trauma, hunger, and exposure. The room seemed to spin around Marcus as he tried to process this information. You're telling me that this little girl has been living on the streets for 3 months? At 8 years old?
How is that even possible?
Children are remarkably resilient, Mr. Thompson, but they're also vulnerable to developing coping mechanisms that help them survive traumatic situations. We believe Emma may have created a fantasy where her mother was still alive and just temporarily away. When she saw the hospital, she may have convinced herself that her mother was inside, which gave her a reason to stay in one place and hope for help. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of Emma's suffering. Where has she been sleeping? How has she been eating? Rebecca consulted her notes. Based on our investigation and some very gentle questioning of Emma, it appears she's been moving between several locations. There's an old playground about 6 blocks from the hospital, where she seems to have spent many nights. A few shop owners in the area remember seeing her and occasionally giving her food scraps, though no one realized she was living on her own. Shop owners saw her and didn't call for help, Marcus asked, his voice rising with indignation. Unfortunately, Mr. Thompson, Emma is a very small child who learned to be invisible to survive. She avoided drawing attention to herself, probably stayed clean by using public restrooms, and only approached people when she was desperate. To most adults, she would have appeared to be a child who was just playing in the area, or waiting for a parent. The social worker continued. There's more, Mr. Thompson. We've been unable to locate any other family members. Carmen Rodriguez was estranged from her own family, and Emma's father is unknown. There are no grandparents, aunts, uncles, or anyone else who can take custody of Emma. Marcus felt a strange mixture of heartbreak and something else he couldn't quite identify. What happens to her now? She'll be placed in foster care while we continue our investigation and search for any possible relatives. The good news is that Emma is a remarkably intelligent and sweet child, despite everything she's been through. The trauma counselor who evaluated her said she has an incredible spirit and will likely recover well with proper care and support. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, thinking about Emma's bright eyes and the way she had trusted him so completely. Can I see her? I promised her I wouldn't abandon her, and I meant it. Rebecca smiled for the first time during their conversation. Actually, that's something I wanted to discuss with you. Emma's attachment to you is quite strong, and our child psychologist believes that maintaining contact with you could be beneficial for her emotional recovery, at least in the short term. What does that mean exactly? Marcus asked. Well, you've already undergone a background check as part of our investigation, and it came back completely clean. If you're willing, we could arrange regular visits while Emma adjusts to her new situation. You could be what we call a supportive adult in her life. Marcus didn't hesitate. Yes, absolutely. When can I see her? Rebecca led Marcus through a series of hallways to a small, cheerfully decorated room where Emma was sitting at a tiny table, coloring with crayons. She was wearing clean clothes that actually fit her, and her hair had been washed and neatly braided. When she looked up and saw Marcus, her entire face lit up with joy. Marcus, you came back. Emma jumped up from her chair and ran to him, wrapping her thin arms around his waist with desperate affection. Of course I came back, sweetheart, Marcus said, kneeling down to hug her properly. I told you I wouldn't leave you, remember? Emma pulled back to look at his face, her expression serious. The nice lady told me that my mama went to be with the angels in heaven. She said that's why she couldn't come back to get me. Her lower lip trembled slightly, but she was trying to be brave. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. I'm so sorry, Emma. That must have been very scary for you, being alone for so long. Emma nodded solemnly. It was scary sometimes, but I remembered what Mama used to tell me about being strong and taking care of myself, and I kept hoping that someday someone nice would find me and help me. Well, someone did find you, Marcus said gently, and now there are lots of people who want to help you and take care of you. As Marcus spent time with Emma that day, reading her stories and listening to her talk about her experiences, he realized that something profound was happening to him. This little girl had awakened something in his heart that he hadn't even known existed. But little did he know that Emma's story held even more surprises, and that the truth about her past would soon reveal connections that neither of them could have imagined. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus first found Emma outside the hospital, and their bond had grown stronger with each visit. He came to see her every other day at the temporary foster home where she had been placed, bringing books, small toys, and most importantly, consistency and love. Sarah had been incredibly supportive, often joining Marcus on his visits and developing her own affection for the remarkable little girl. On this particular Thursday afternoon, Marcus was reading Emma a story about a brave princess when Rebecca appeared in the doorway of the foster home's living room, carrying an official-looking envelope and wearing an expression that Marcus couldn't quite read. "Mr. Thompson, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" Rebecca asked. "Emma, would you mind continuing to look at your picture book while Marcus and I talk?" "We'll be right back." Emma nodded cheerfully, having grown comfortable with Rebecca over the past few weeks. "Okay, but don't take too long. I want to hear the end of the princess story." In the quiet hallway, Rebecca handed Marcus the envelope with trembling hands. "Mr. Thompson, we've received some DNA test results that I need to discuss with you. As part of our standard investigation, we ran Emma's DNA through various databases looking for any possible family connections." Marcus took the envelope, confused. "Okay, did you find relatives?" "That would be wonderful news for Emma." Rebecca took a deep breath. "We did find a match, Mr. Thompson. But it's not what you think, and it's going to be shocking news for everyone involved." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "The DNA test revealed that Emma is your biological niece." Marcus stared at Rebecca, certain he had misheard her. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" "Emma Rodriguez is your brother David's daughter, Mr. Thompson. She's your niece." The envelope slipped from Marcus's numb fingers and fluttered to the floor. David. His younger brother David, who had disappeared 8 years ago after struggling with drug addiction and mental health issues. The brother he had searched for desperately, hiring private investigators and posting missing person reports, only to eventually accept that David might never be found. "That's impossible," Marcus whispered. "David never mentioned having a child, and Emma's last name is Rodriguez, not Thompson." Rebecca retrieved the envelope and gently guided Marcus to a nearby chair. "We believe David may have taken Carmen Rodriguez's last name when they were together, possibly to avoid being found or to start fresh." "The DNA doesn't lie, Mr. Thompson. Emma is definitely David's daughter, which makes her your biological niece." Marcus's mind raced as he tried to process this earth-shattering revelation. "But why wouldn't David have told me about her? Why wouldn't he have brought her to me when things got bad with Carmen?" From what we've been able to piece together through records and interviews with people who knew Carmen, David and Carmen had a very tumultuous relationship. They broke up and got back together multiple times. It's possible that David didn't even know about Emma's existence during some periods, or that Carmen kept Emma from him during their separations. The social worker continued. "We also found some old police reports indicating that David had several run-ins with law enforcement about 8 and 9 years ago. He may have felt that his lifestyle and legal troubles made him an unfit father, so he stayed away to protect Emma." Marcus felt a wave of emotions crash over him. Grief for his lost brother, anger that David had kept Emma's existence a secret, overwhelming love for the little girl he now knew was family, and guilt that he hadn't found them sooner. "Where is David now?" Marcus asked quietly. "Is he alive?" Rebecca's expression grew even more somber. "We're still investigating, but preliminary evidence suggests that David died approximately 2 years ago, also from complications related to drug use. Carmen and Emma were on their own for about a year before Carmen's death 3 months ago." Marcus buried his face in his hands, overwhelmed by the magnitude of loss and missed opportunities. His brother had died without Marcus ever finding him, and Emma had been orphaned and living on the streets while her uncle searched desperately for any remaining family. "Mr. Thompson," Rebecca said gently, "there's something else you need to know. Under these circumstances, as Emma's biological uncle and only known living relative, you would be given priority consideration if you wished to pursue custody or adoption." Marcus looked up sharply. The thought had been growing in his heart over the past few weeks, but he hadn't dared to voice it. "You mean Emma could come live with Sarah and me? If that's what you want, yes. There would be a process to go through. home studies and evaluations. But given your existing relationship with Emma and the fact that she's already bonded with you, it would likely be approved relatively quickly. Marcus stood up abruptly, needing to move as his mind raced. I need to tell Emma. She has a right to know that we're family. Actually, Mr. Thompson, I'd recommend that we involve a child psychologist in that conversation. Emma has experienced significant trauma and loss. Learning that she has family, but that her father died without her knowing him, could be overwhelming. We want to make sure we present this information in a way that she can process healthily. Marcus nodded, understanding the wisdom in Rebecca's suggestion. But she can know that we're related. That she's not alone in the world? Absolutely. In fact, it might bring her great comfort to know that the connection she felt with you was deeper than just kindness from a stranger. Children often have an intuitive sense about family bonds. As they walked back toward the living room where Emma waited, Marcus's mind was already spinning with possibilities. His small two-bedroom house would need another room. Sarah had always wanted children, but they had struggled with infertility for years. Could this be the way their family was meant to grow? Marcus! Emma called out cheerfully as soon as she saw him. Are you okay? You look sad. Marcus knelt down beside her chair, looking into the brown eyes that he now realized looked remarkably similar to his brother's. I'm not sad, sweetheart. Actually, I just learned some very special news that I want to share with you. Emma set down her crayons and turned to face him completely, sensing the importance of the moment. What kind of special news? Marcus took her small hands in his. Emma, do you remember how I told you that families come in many different forms, and that sometimes people who love each other become family even if they weren't born that way? Emma nodded seriously. Like how you and Sarah became family when you got married, even though you weren't brother and sister first. Exactly like that. Well, it turns out that you and I were already family before we even met. You're my brother's daughter, which means you're my niece and I'm your uncle. Emma's eyes grew wide with wonder and confusion. Really, we're already family? But how come I didn't know? Sometimes families get separated and don't know about each other for a while. Marcus explained carefully. But the important thing is that we found each other now. And that means you're not alone in the world. Emma, you have family who loves you very much. Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing this information with the remarkable resilience she had shown throughout her ordeal. Finally, she looked up at Marcus with tears in her eyes. Does this mean I can stay with you and Sarah forever? Does this mean I don't have to be scared anymore? Marcus felt his own eyes fill with tears as he pulled Emma into a tight hug. If you want to stay with us forever, sweetheart, then yes. We would love nothing more than to be your family officially. As Emma wrapped her arms around Marcus's neck and whispered, I love you, Uncle Marcus. He realized that sometimes the most profound truths reveal themselves in the most unexpected ways. What had started as a simple act of kindness had uncovered a family connection that none of them had known existed, proving that love and family ties can transcend time, tragedy, and even death. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the doorway of what had once been his home office, now transformed into a bright, cheerful bedroom decorated with butterfly stickers and filled with books, toys, and the laughter of a little girl who was finally, truly home. Emma had been living with him and Sarah for 3 months now, and the transformation in all of their lives had been nothing short of miraculous. The legal process had moved more quickly than anyone had expected. With Marcus being Emma's biological uncle, and with her clear preference to stay with the couple who had shown her such love, the courts had expedited the custody proceedings. Sarah had thrown herself into preparing their home and their lives for Emma with enthusiasm and joy, finally having the opportunity to be the mother she had always dreamed of becoming. But it was the emotional journey that had been most remarkable. Emma, with the help of a skilled child therapist, had begun processing the trauma of her early years and the loss of both her parents. She had started school and was thriving academically, her natural intelligence finally given the proper nurturing it needed. Most importantly, she was learning what it meant to feel safe, loved, and truly wanted. On this particular Saturday morning, Marcus found Emma sitting at her small desk, carefully writing in a journal that her therapist had encouraged her to keep. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, and she was biting her lower lip the way Sarah did when she was focused on something important. What are you working on so seriously, sweetheart? Marcus asked, settling into the comfortable reading chair they had placed in her room. Emma looked up with a smile that still made Marcus's heart skip a beat. Over the months, she had gained weight and her cheeks had filled out, giving her the healthy glow that every child deserved. "I'm writing about my daddy," she said simply. "Dr. Maria said it might help me feel better to write down what I wish I could tell him." Marcus felt the familiar tug of emotion that came whenever Emma mentioned David. Through therapy and careful conversations, Emma had learned the truth about her father's struggles and death. Rather than being bitter or angry, she had shown a remarkable capacity for understanding and forgiveness that continually amazed the adults in her life. "What kinds of things are you writing to him?" Marcus asked gently. Emma set down her pencil and climbed into Marcus's lap, something that had become their morning ritual. "I'm telling him about you and Sarah and how you take such good care of me. I'm telling him about my new school and my teacher, Miss Rodriguez, and how I have a best friend named Katie now." She paused, looking thoughtful. "And I'm telling him that I'm not mad at him for not being able to take care of me. Dr. Maria explained that sometimes grown-ups have sicknesses that make it hard for them to do the things they want to do, even when they love their children very much." Marcus marveled at Emma's emotional maturity and wisdom. "That's exactly right, Emma. Your daddy loved you, but he was fighting battles that were bigger than he was. He would be so proud of the strong, smart, kind little girl you've become." Emma snuggled closer to Marcus. "Do you think he knows about us finding each other? Do you think he knows I'm safe now?" Marcus thought carefully about his answer. He and Sarah had decided early on to be honest with Emma about difficult topics while still being age-appropriate and hopeful. "I think that people who love us are never really gone completely. They live on in our hearts and in our memories. So in that way, yes, I believe your daddy knows that you're loved and safe." They were interrupted by Sarah calling from the kitchen. "Breakfast is ready. We're having Emma's favorite pancakes with strawberries." As they made their way to the kitchen, Emma skipping ahead excitedly, Marcus reflected on how much their lives had changed. The house that had once felt too quiet now bubbled with activity and joy. Sarah had flourished in her role as Emma's mother figure, and Emma had taken to calling her Aunt Sarah with genuine affection. Over breakfast, Emma chattered about her plans for the day, which included a play date with Katie, working in the small garden they had planted together, and a family movie night. As Marcus listened to her animated conversation, he was struck by how normal and wonderful their life had become. After Emma ran off to get dressed for her play date, Sarah sat down next to Marcus with her coffee. "I got a call from Rebecca yesterday," she said quietly. "She wanted to update us on the final paperwork for the adoption." Marcus looked up with interest. Although they had been Emma's legal guardians for months now, they had decided to pursue formal adoption to make their family bond permanent and official. "Everything is proceeding smoothly," Sarah continued. "The final hearing is scheduled for next month. After that, Emma will officially be Emma Thompson, and will be her legal parents in every sense of the word." Marcus felt a swell of emotion at the thought of Emma carrying their family name, of making their bond official in the eyes of the law. "How do you feel about it?" he asked Sarah. Sarah's eyes filled with happy tears. "I feel like we're completing something that was always meant to be. You know, I used to wonder why we couldn't have children of our own. I thought maybe we weren't meant to be parents. But now I understand that we were meant to be Emma's parents specifically. She needed us and we needed her." Marcus reached across the table to take Sarah's hand. "I keep thinking about that morning at the hospital. What if I had been running on time? What if I had been too focused on my appointment to notice her? What if I had just assumed someone else would help?" "But you didn't," Sarah reminded him firmly. "You stopped. You cared. You followed your heart, and look what happened. We found our daughter and Emma found her family." Later that afternoon, while Emma was at her playdate, Marcus decided to drive to the cemetery where David was buried. It had taken months of detective work by Rebecca and a private investigator to locate David's grave in a small cemetery on the outskirts of the city. Marcus had visited several times over the past few months, usually alone, needing private time to process his grief and speak to the brother he had lost. The modest headstone simply read, "David Michael Rodriguez, beloved son and father." Marcus had arranged for the headstone, wanting to ensure that David was remembered with dignity, despite the circumstances of his death. He placed a small bouquet of wildflowers beside the stone and sat down on the bench he had donated to the cemetery. "Hey, David," Marcus began, speaking aloud as he had learned to do during these visits. "I brought you some flowers from Emma's garden. She helped plant them, and she's so proud of how they're growing. She wanted me to tell you that she's learning to ride a bike, and that she lost her first tooth last week." Marcus paused, looking out over the peaceful cemetery grounds. "I wish you could see her, Dave. She's incredible. She's smart and funny and brave, just like you were when we were kids. She has your eyes and your stubborn streak. But she also has this amazing capacity for love and forgiveness that I think she got from the best parts of both you and Carmen." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the oak tree overhead, and Marcus took it as a sign to continue. "I want you to know that we're taking good care of her. Sarah loves her like she's her own daughter, and Emma is thriving. She's getting the childhood she deserves, full of safety and love and opportunities to just be a kid." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed the headstone a recent photo of Emma grinning widely, missing her front tooth with chocolate ice cream smeared on her chin. "Look at that smile, Dave. That's the smile of a happy, secure child. I promise you that we'll always make sure she knows she's loved and wanted." As he prepared to leave, Marcus noticed something that made him stop in his tracks. There, growing wild at the base of David's headstone, was a small patch of the same wildflowers that Emma had planted in their garden at home. Marcus had never noticed them before, and the groundskeeper had told him that nothing had been planted there. He knelt down to examine the flowers more closely, marveling at the coincidence. Or perhaps, he thought with a smile, it wasn't a coincidence at all. Perhaps it was David's way of letting him know that he approved of the family they were building, that he was at peace knowing Emma was loved and cared for. When Marcus arrived home, he found Emma and Sarah in the kitchen working together to prepare dinner. Emma was standing on a step stool, carefully stirring something in a pot while Sarah guided her movements. "Uncle Marcus," Emma called out happily. "We're making your favorite soup. Sarah is teaching me how to cook so I can help take care of our family too." The word "our" hit Marcus with its simple power. Emma didn't just live with them or stay with them temporarily. She was part of their family completely and permanently. She belonged with them in every way that mattered. That evening, as they sat around the dinner table sharing stories about their day, Emma made an announcement that surprised both adults. "I've been thinking," she said seriously, "about when the judge makes me officially Emma Thompson next month." Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances, wondering what was concerning her. "What about it, sweetheart?" Sarah asked gently. "Well, I was wondering if maybe I could keep Rodriguez as a middle name, like Emma Rodriguez Thompson. That way I would have something for my mama and daddy, but I would also really truly be part of our family." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion at Emma's thoughtfulness and wisdom. Even at her young age, she understood the importance of honoring her past while embracing her future. "I think that's a beautiful idea," Marcus said. "Emma Rodriguez Thompson has a wonderful ring to it." Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "It's perfect. It shows that our family is big enough to include everyone who loved you, even the people who aren't here anymore." As they finished dinner and moved into their evening routine of homework, baths and bedtime stories, Marcus marveled at how naturally they had all fallen into the rhythms of family life. What had started as a moment of compassion for a stranger had evolved into the deepest, most meaningful relationship of his life. 1 year later, Marcus stood at the kitchen window watching Emma play in their backyard with Rusty, the golden retriever puppy they had adopted for her 9th birthday. The morning sun caught the highlights in her hair as she threw a tennis ball and laughed at Rusty's enthusiastic but clumsy attempts to catch it. She had grown several inches over the past year, and her face had lost the hollow, frightened look that had broken his heart that first day outside the hospital. "She's gotten so tall," Sarah commented, joining Marcus at the window with 2 cups of coffee. "Pretty soon she'll be taller than me," Marcus chuckled, accepting his coffee gratefully. "She's growing like a weed. We're going to need to buy her new clothes again soon." It was a complaint he made with joy rather than annoyance. The simple pleasure of buying his daughter new clothes when she outgrew the old ones was something he would never take for granted. Today was special for several reasons. It marked exactly 1 year since the adoption had been finalized, making Emma officially Emma Rodriguez Thompson. It was also the day that Marcus had planned to share some news with Emma that he hoped would bring her closure and peace. Over the past few months, Marcus had been working with a genealogist and private investigator to piece together more of Emma's family history. What they had discovered had been both heartbreaking and beautiful, and Marcus felt it was time for Emma to know the full story of where she came from. "Emma," Sarah called from the back door. "Come inside, sweetheart. Daddy has something special to show you." Emma bounded into the house with Rusty at her heels, both of them slightly out of breath from their morning play. Over the year, Emma had naturally begun calling Marcus Daddy and Sarah Mommy, transitions that had happened organically as their family bond deepened. "What's the special thing?" Emma asked, settling into her favorite chair at the kitchen table while Rusty flopped down at her feet. Marcus sat down across from her, pulling out a carefully prepared photo album and several documents. "Remember how we've talked about your birth parents and how sometimes it takes time to learn about family history?" Emma nodded seriously. She had continued working with Dr. Maria, and their conversations about her past had become easier and more natural over time. "You mean like how we didn't know Daddy David was your brother at first?" "Exactly like that," Marcus confirmed. "Well, I've been working with some people who help families learn about their history, and I've discovered some wonderful things about your mama Carmen and your daddy David that I want to share with you." Marcus opened the photo album to the first page, which contained the only photo he had been able to find of David and Carmen together. It was a slightly blurry picture taken at what appeared to be a carnival or fair, with both of them smiling widely at the camera. David looked young and happy, his arm around a beautiful woman with long dark hair and Emma's same bright smile. "This is your mama and daddy when they first met," Marcus explained gently. "They were both very young, about 20 years old, and they were very much in love." Emma studied the photo carefully, tracing her finger over her parents' faces. "They look happy," she observed. "Mama looks really pretty." "She was beautiful," Marcus agreed. "And look at this." He turned to the next page, which showed a birth certificate and hospital bracelet. "These are from when you were born. Your daddy was there at the hospital when you came into the world, and he was so excited to meet you." Sarah moved to sit next to Emma, putting her arm around their daughter as Marcus continued sharing what he had learned. Through interviews with people who had known David and Carmen, Marcus had discovered that the first 2 years of Emma's life had been happy ones. David had tried hard to overcome his addiction and be a good father, and Carmen had been a loving, attentive mother before her mental illness became more severe. "Your daddy loved you so much that he wrote letters to you," Marcus continued, pulling out copies of handwritten notes that had been found among David's possessions after his death. "He wanted to give these to you when you were older, but he kept them safe, hoping that someday you would know how much you meant to him." Emma's eyes grew wide as Marcus handed her the letters, written in David's careful handwriting. Though she was still learning to read cursive, she could make out words like beautiful daughter and love you forever. "He really wrote these for me?" she asked in wonder. "He really did," Marcus confirmed. "And there's more. I found out that your mama had a sister who lives in California. Her name is Rosa, and she's been looking for you ever since she heard about your mama's death." This revelation made Emma sit up straighter with excitement. "I have an aunt? A real aunt from my mama's side?" Sarah smiled, having been involved in the recent phone conversations with Rosa. "We've been talking to Aunt Rosa on the phone, and she would love to meet you. She has pictures of your mama when she was little, and stories about their childhood together. She wants to be part of your life if you'd like that." Marcus pulled out his laptop and opened a video chat application. "In fact, she's waiting to meet you right now if you're ready." Emma bounced in her chair with excitement. "Yes, I want to meet her." Within moments, the screen filled with the image of a woman who looked remarkably like Carmen, but older and with kind, gentle eyes. "Hola, Emma," Rosa said warmly. "I am so happy to finally see your beautiful face." What followed was an emotional and joyful conversation as Rosa shared memories of Carmen's childhood, showed Emma photos of her mother as a little girl, and explained how much the family had wondered about Emma over the years. Rosa spoke both English and Spanish, and she delighted Emma by teaching her a few Spanish phrases that Carmen used to say. "Your mama used to sing you a special lullaby when you were a baby," Rosa said, and then she sang a gentle Spanish song that made Emma's eyes fill with tears of recognition rather than sadness. "I remember that," Emma exclaimed. "Sometimes I dream about someone singing that song to me." After the video call ended, Emma sat quietly for a few minutes, processing all the new information about her family history. Finally, she looked up at Marcus and Sarah with the expression of wonder and gratitude. I have such a big family now, she said softly. I have you and Mommy Sarah, and I have memories of Daddy David and Mama Carmen, and now I have Aunt Rosa too. And even Rusty is part of our family. As if summoned by his name, Rusty lifted his head and thumped his tail against the floor. Marcus felt a profound sense of completion and peace. The frightened, abandoned little girl he had found outside the hospital had blossomed into a confident, love child who understood that family comes in many forms, and that love can transcend loss and tragedy. You know what, Emma? Marcus said, pulling both his wife and daughter into a warm hug. I think that day I found you outside the hospital was the luckiest day of my life. Not just because I found you, but because you found us too. We were meant to be a family. Emma giggled, the sound filling their kitchen with joy. Maybe Daddy David and Mama Carmen sent you to find me that day. Maybe they knew I needed a daddy who would stop to help a little girl who was scared and alone. As Marcus looked into Emma's bright, happy eyes, he realized that she might be exactly right. Sometimes the most beautiful truths are the ones that reveal themselves through love, faith, and the simple act of opening your heart to help another person. What had started as a moment of compassion had transformed all of their lives, proving that families are created not just by blood, but by choice, love, and the courage to care for others when they need it most. That evening, as Emma fell asleep clutching one of David's letters and with Rusty curled up at the foot of her bed, Marcus and Sarah stood in her doorway reflecting on the incredible journey that had brought them all together. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, new challenges, and new joys, but tonight they were simply a family, complete and grateful for the love that had made them whole.